I want you to think back for a second to a very specific phase of life. Have you ever lived in a shared house?
Oh, man.
Right. Or maybe you just, spent a lot of time visiting friends who did. You definitely know the exact vibe I'm talking about.
The chaotic kitchen.
Exactly. It's that kitchen where there are somehow like 5 different types of milk in the
Mm.
fridge, but absolutely no clean forks anywhere.
Yeah, and the highly negotiated morning bathroom schedules.
Yes, and the mountain of mismatched shoes by the front door.
Oh,
Or those passive-aggressive sticky notes about taking out the bins. We have all seen it.
we really have.
But behind that familiar domestic chaos, have you ever actually stopped and wondered who makes sure those multi-tenant spaces are, well, actually safe?
Most people don't.
Right. Who makes sure a building packed with independent adults is legal and livable once that front door actually closes?
It's just entirely invisible to the average person. I mean, we just assume that because a building is standing, the lights turn on, people are paying rent, that someone somewhere has verified it's a safe environment.
You just assume it's fine.
Yeah, we take that structural and legal safety net completely for granted, well, right up until the moment something goes catastrophically wrong.
And today, we are going right into the heart of that invisible safety net. We're doing a deep dive into a really revealing internal document. It's called the HMO Legal Compliance and Inspection Standards Guide.
It's quite the read.
It really is. It's basically a comprehensive training manual for property inspectors who work for a company called HouseShare Heroes. And our mission today is to uncover the hidden legal and safety tripwires scattered throughout these shared homes.
Because there are a lot of them.
So many. We want to figure out how these inspectors act as this crucial, largely unsung first line of defense. They're protected against both fatal disasters and, frankly, massive financial ruin for the property owners.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can start looking for problems hiding in the hallways, we need to understand exactly what kind of property we're even dealing with and why the government treats them so differently from, like, a standard rental.
Right. And that distinction is really where everything originates. So the acronym we're focusing on is HMO. That stands for a house in multiple occupation.
Got it.
And the legal threshold for an HMO is actually incredibly specific. You cross into this territory when a property is occupied by 3 or more people who form 2 or more separate households, and they have to share basic amenities like a kitchen, bathroom, or toilet.
Just to clarify the separate households part, we are talking about your classic studi houses, professional house shares, or maybe a converted Victorian house where people rent a single room but share a bathroom down the hall.
Exactly.
We aren't talking about, a couple with 3 kids.
No, precisely the opposite of a family unit, yes. I mean, a family living together shares a certain rhythm. They have a collective responsibility for their space.
Where they operate as one unit.
Yeah, but when you place 3, 4, or 5 unrelated independent adults into a single dwelling, you fundamentally alter the physics of that house.
How so?
Well, you introduce a completely different dynamic of wear and tear, energy usage, and significantly higher risk. Like multiple independent schedules mean the kitchen is in use constantly.
Oh, sure. Someone's making breakfast at 6 a.m., someone else is cooking dinner at midnight.
Exactly. Appliances just never get a break. Front doors are opening and closing 20 times a day. And because of that inherently multiplied risk, local authorities heavily regulate these properties.
Makes sense.
Yeah, for many of them, especially the larger ones housing 5 or more people, the landlord cannot legally operate without securing a specific HMO license from the local council.
And the manual makes it very clear that getting that license isn't just, a matter of filling out a web form and paying a small admin fee.
Oh, definitely not.
It comes with a massive, rigid set of conditions. And the stakes for failing to meet those conditions, like if an inspector misses something or a landlord ignores a problem, they are just staggering.
They are built to be severely punitive, really to deter bad actors. A failure to comply isn't met with, like, a polite warning letter. No, local authorities can issue civil penalties of up to £30,000 per individual offense.
Wait, per offense?
Per offense. So if a house has 3 separate safety breaches, that's potentially £90,000 in fines.
That is wild.
And on top of that, there is this mechanism called a rent repayment order.
I read about that. That sounded brutal.
It is. It allows tenants or the local authority to claim back up to 12 months of rent from the landlord if the property is being operated illegally. Plus, the council can completely revoke the HMO license.
Which effectively shuts down the landlord's entire business overnight.
Exactly. And if the negligence is severe enough, it escalates to criminal prosecution.
Okay, let's trace that out because that really helps explain the mindset of the inspector walking into one of these homes. One of the primary things they're hunting for is overcrowding, finding these ghost tenants.
Yes, the ghost tenants.
These are people living in the house who simply aren't on the official tenancy agreement, right?
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the level of deductive reasoning this demands from the inspector.
Because they can't just interrogate people.
Right. An inspector cannot conduct a raid. They can't, barge in at 3 a.m., shine a flashlight, and demand to see everyone's passport. Their role is entirely observational.
They just have to watch and look.
Yeah. They have to reconcile the official paperwork, let's say a license for 5 occupants, against the physical, lived reality of the house.
I found this fascinating because instead of being an enforcer, the inspector acts more like a referee in a chaotic sport.
That's a great way to put it.
They aren't playing the game. They don't live there. They aren't managing the team because they aren't the landlord. They just step into the middle of the field to make sure no one is violating the rules.
Precisely.
So if they walk into a bedroom and see a mattress on the floor, their brain processes that completely differently than mine would.
How would you see it?
I might see a mattress on the floor and think, okay, maybe they just moved in and haven't bought an IKEA bed frame yet. Rough interior design choice, but whatever. But to an inspector, that mattress is a massive, glowing red flag.
Oh, completely. Think about the chain of causality that mattress represents. Let's say a tenant decides to let their partner move in to save on rent.
Happens all the time.
It does. They throw a mattress on the floor. It seems like a totally harmless personal choice. But suddenly, a house legally licensed for 5 people now has 6.
Which breaks the rules.
Right. That single, unofficial extra person voids the HMO license.
Yeah.
If the council discovers this, they could slap the landlord with a £30,000 fine for breaching the license conditions.
Unbelievable.
Furthermore, the other tenants could potentially initiate a rent repayment order because the house is now legally overcrowded. So that seemingly innocent mattress on the floor is quite literally a £30,000 legal liability just waiting to detonate.
So the inspector is scanning for those really subtle physical clues.
Yeah.
Like an extra toothbrush in the bathroom.
Yes.
Or too many shoes by the door. A suspicious amount of luggage. Or a dining room that suddenly has like a wardrobe in it.
They are looking for volume mismatches, an excessive amount of personal belongings crammed into a single room.
Right.
They'll document if a storage room or a lounge has been quietly converted into sleeping quarters. And the crucial element here is methodology.
What do you mean?
They don't aggressively confront the tenant and demand to know who the extra toothbrush belongs to. They meticulously record the visual evidence, they take clear, dated photographs, and they escalate the discrepancy to the property managers to investigate formally.
And an extra person isn't just a paperwork problem, right? The introduction of that ghost tenant naturally bleeds into the next massive area of inspection, which is the sheer physical strain on the house itself.
Exactly.
Because you add another person, you're adding more showers, more laundry, more cooking. The infrastructure simply isn't designed for it.
And that physical strain is exactly why the government enforces strict amenity standards. The law demands that the facilities actually match the occupancy.
And it gets incredibly granular.
It really does. For instance, there is a strict national minimum for bedroom sizes in an HMO. It's 6.25 square meters for a single adult.
Wow, that's specific.
Very specific. Any smaller, and it is legally uninhabitable. But beyond square footage, it's really about the daily functional reality of the space.
Right. The manual notes that inspectors aren't necessarily, measuring every room with a laser every single month, but they have to be hyper alert to the signs of functional overcrowding.
Yes.
If a kitchen was designed for 4 people, but 6 are using it, things just start to break down.
You start looking at appliance capacity, like is there sufficient fridge and freezer space?
Good point.
If 6 adults are trying to share one standard upright fridge, food contamination becomes a very real issue. The inspector is checking the functionality of hobs, ovens, and mechanical extractor fans.
Oh, the extractor fan.
Yeah, if an extractor fan in a bathroom dies and you have 5 people showering every morning, you are going to generate immense amounts of steam.
Which leads to mold.
Directly. Severe mold and persistent condensation. which is a major health hazard and a massive compliance failure.
So it's about making sure the house can actually support the sheer volume of human life inside it.
Exactly.
But, I mean, even severe mold pales in comparison to the absolute highest priority in this manual, the thing that every inspector is trained to treat with deadly seriousness.
Fire safety.
Yes, fire safety. The statistics in the manual are just sobering. Shared houses are a significantly higher fire risk than single-family homes.
Well, just consider the physics of it. You have multiple independent adults. Someone comes home late from a shift and starts cooking chips in oil.
Right.
Someone else has an old, uncertified space heater plugged into an overloaded extension lid in their bedroom. Another person leaves a hair straightener on.
Just a recipe for disaster.
The sheer number of ignition sources multiplies exponentially. Therefore, the fire safety infrastructure has to be incredibly robust, and the inspector's checks are accordingly exhaustive.
They are checking the central fire alarm panels, looking for any displayed faults, or, incredibly, entire disabled zones where the alarm has been manually switched off.
Which happens more than you'd think.
I can't even imagine. They check the manual call points, those red break glass boxes in the hallways to ensure they haven't been smashed or obstructed by furniture.
Yes, and they verify that the emergency lighting in the hallways will actually trigger if the main power grid goes down during a fire.
And then we come to the most critical physical barrier in the house, the fire doors.
Yes.
It is vital to understand that a fire door is not just like a heavy piece of wood. It is a highly engineered, life-saving device.
Its sole purpose is to compartmentalize the building. It traps fire and toxic smoke in the room of origin for a guaranteed period.
Usually about 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, usually 30 minutes, so everyone else can safely evacuate.
The anatomy of these doors is fascinating,
Yeah.
and the inspector has to check every single component. They check the self-closing mechanisms to ensure the door actually clicks shut on its own from literally any angle. They check the hinges. But the part that really stood out to me was the intumescent strips.
The science behind intumescent strips is remarkable.
It really is.
So these are thin strips installed around the edges of the door or inside the frame. During normal daily use, you barely even notice them, but they are made of materials often sodium silicate or graphite that react violently to extreme heat.
Wow.
If a fire breaks out, the heat causes these strips to swell and expand up to 20 times their original size.
20 times.
Yeah. They completely seal the tiny gap between the door and the frame with a dense, fire-resistant char.
That's incredible.
This prevents oxygen from rushing in to feed the fire and stops lethal, superheated smoke from escaping into the hallway.
But, and this is key, if a tenant has painted over that strip during, a DIY redecorating weekend, or if a chunk of it has chipped off,
Yeah.
that chemical reaction just can't happen.
Exactly.
The seal fails, the smoke escapes, and the escape route becomes deadly. And speaking of escape routes, this seems to be a constant battleground.
It is a massive issue.
The inspector has to ensure hallways and staircases are utterly clear of obstructions. No bicycles, no prams, no rubbish bags, no drying racks dumped in the corridor.
Nothing at all.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because, wait, hold on. If I am the tenant, and I decide to park my muddy mountain bike right in the middle of the escape route hallway because I just don't want it in my room, or let's say I tape a plastic bag over this smoke detector in my kitchen because it keeps going off every time I make toast, why on earth does my bad behavior become the inspector's problem? Or worse, why is my taped-over alarm the landlord's 30,000-pound legal liability? I did it. It was my choice.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes down to a very powerful piece of UK legislation. It's called the Management of Houses in Multiple Occupation Regulations 2006.
Okay.
The law recognizes that tenants will do things like prop open fire doors or tape over alarms, but the legislation fundamentally places the ultimate non-negotiable legal duty on the landlord and the property manager to maintain the common parts and the safety features of the building.
So a landlord can never, stand up in court, point at the tenant and say, hey, it's their fault, they blocked the hallway.
Never. The legal philosophy is essentially this. You, the landlord, have chosen to run a high-risk commercial enterprise by packing multiple households into a single building for profit.
Right, you made the choice.
Exactly. Therefore, you bear the active, continuous responsibility to ensure that environment remains safe. You cannot passively collect rent and ignore the reality of the house.
Right.
If a tenant props open a fire door with a brick, and the landlord or their agent never conducts visits, never notices the book, and never removes it, the landlord is entirely failing in their statutory management duties.
That makes the inspector's role make so much more sense. The inspector's ability to show up on a Tuesday, photograph that mountain bike in the hallway, log the taped-over smoke alarm, and force management to send a warning to the tenant.
Yes.
That paper trail is literally the only thing standing between the landlord and total legal ruin.
It creates a verifiable audit trail of compliance. By actively finding the fault and escalating it, the inspector proves to the council that the management company is diligently overseeing the property. They are demonstrating that they are not absentee landlords.
Okay, so we've established that the inspector has this immense, heavy legal mandate to meticulously comb through the property for safety hazards.
Huge, man.
They have to check every hinge, every alarm, every room for ghost tenants. But there is a massive, unavoidable complication to all of this. These aren't sterile warehouses or empty office buildings.
Ooh, they are not.
People live there. These are people's actual bedrooms and private sanctuaries.
Yeah.
How do you police the microscopic safety details of a home without violating the residents' fundamental privacy?
You're hitting on the absolute core tension of the job. This is the tightrope the inspector walks every single day. And it all hinges on a fundamental legal concept known as the resident's right to quiet enjoyment.
Now, the manual makes a point to clarify that quiet enjoyment does not mean literal acoustic silence, right? A tenant can still play music or have friends over?
Right. In property law, quiet enjoyment is a much broader concept. It means the tenant has the absolute right to privacy, the right to reasonable freedom from disturbance, and the right to inhabit their home without the landlord or their agents constantly intruding or harassing them.
So it's about peace of mind.
Yes. A tenant's room is their legally protected sanctuary.
Because of that, the guide places these incredibly strict, rigid boundaries on the inspectors. Let's look at how a visit actually plays out. Even just accessing the communal hallways or the kitchen, the inspector, who usually holds a master key, still has to announce their presence loudly.
They do.
They have to be courteous, introduce themselves to anyone cooking lunch, and respect the fact that they are a guest in someone's living space. But when they need to inspect the bedrooms, the rules completely change.
Oh, completely. Bedrooms are strictly private domains. Under no circumstances can an inspector simply turn the key and walk into a bedroom.
Never.
Never. First, appropriate formal legal notice, usually a minimum of 24 hours, must have been served to the tenant in advance. And even with that legal notice served, the physical protocol on the day is highly specific. The inspector must knock firmly, clearly announce who they are, and critically, they must step back and wait.
So they cannot do the classic, knock and turn the handle simultaneously.
Absolutely not.
They have to give the person inside actual time to wake up, get dressed, or respond.
It's about fundamental respect. And once they are granted access inside that bedroom, the psychological discipline required is just immense.
I can imagine.
Imagine an inspector needs to check a window lock, but right beneath the window is a desk covered in the tenant's personal bank statements, medical letters, or maybe a diary. The inspector must actively avert their eyes.
The list of absolute don'ts is severe. No opening private drawers, no looking inside cupboards that belong to the tenant, no photographing anything that contains personal information or identifying documents.
None of it.
And what happens if the inspector knocks, the tenant opens the door and just flat out says, "No, you can't come in today"?
The inspector never, ever forces the issue.
Really? Even with notice?
Even with notice. They do not argue, they do not threaten, and they do not force entry. If access is verbally or physically refused, they calmly step back.
Wow.
They document the date, the time, the resident's exact words, and the reason given for the refusal. They take that factual record back to the property manager to handle legally.
It requires such a bizarre psychological dual focus. I was trying to imagine doing this job. You had to train your brain to be incredibly sharp and observant, to notice that a tiny plastic strip on a door frame is missing, or to calculate that the sheer volume of clothes in a room implies an illegal occupant.
Right.
You are hunting for hidden dangers.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, you have to train your brain to be completely blind to a pile of personal mail sitting right in front of you.
Exactly.
You have to see absolutely everything related to building safety and intentionally see absolutely nothing related to personal privacy.
This raises an important question about who is actually capable of doing this work. I mean, the technical knowledge of fire systems is obviously crucial, but the real requisite skill is a profound level of emotional intelligence.
You really have to be good with people.
Yes. The manual codifies this into what we can consider the golden rule for House Share Heroes inspectors. You are not a solicitor, you are not a compliance officer, and you are not a structural engineer.
So you don't walk into a house and declare, "This building is officially illegal."
No. Your mandate is purely factual observation. You identify potential issues, you gather objective evidence.
Just the facts.
Exactly. You take clear photographs of the specific safety concerns, actively avoiding personal items. You record the facts accurately, and you escalate those risks up the chain of command. You never offer legal advice to a stressed tenant, and you don't offer compliance guarantees to the landlord.
The best inspectors aren't acting like beat cops handing out citations. They're meticulously observant diplomats.
That's a perfect description.
They spot the blocked escape route, they notice the failing extractor fan, they document the overcrowded room,
Yeah.
and they push that data to management long before it spirals into a tragic fire, a hostile council enforcement action, or a devastating fine. They navigate this incredibly complex web of human unpredictability and rigid legal code.
And without that methodical, emotionally intelligent observation, the natural entropy of a densely packed, shared house will always lead to compliance failures.
That's just inevitable.
It really is. It is only a matter of time before a safety system is bypassed or an appliance is overloaded. The inspector is the mechanism that fights back against that entropy.
Which brings all of this into perspective.
Yeah.
Because what we've discovered diving into this manual is that the hidden world of HMO inspections is far, far more complex than just a person with a clipboard checking boxes.
Oh, absolutely.
It is this high-wire balancing act. On one side, you are hunting down life-threatening safety hazards, ensuring that the heavy punitive weight of the law is respected so that a landlord doesn't face financial ruin.
Right.
But on the exact same walkthrough, you are upholding a deep respect for human privacy, recognizing that these heavily regulated boxes are actually people's sanctuaries.
It is the delicate art of enforcing strict safety parameters inside someone else's living room.
So the next time you walk down the street and pass a large, bustling shared house with like 5 different cars parked outside, or maybe if you happen to live in one of those houses right now, you'll realize there's a massive invisible framework of regulations wrapped tightly around that building.
It's everywhere.
And there are highly trained inspectors quietly moving through the halls, knocking firmly, waiting patiently, and documenting the vital details needed to keep that roof safely over those heads.
It's quite the job.
So, what does this all mean for us? We've looked at the terrifying fines, the science of fire doors, and the profound legal right to privacy. But I want to leave you with a thought to mull over long after you turn this off. If the safety of a building relies so heavily on constant scheduled surveillance by an outside inspector to make sure alarms aren't covered and bikes aren't in the way, does the true responsibility for a safe home ultimately lie with the physical architecture of the building, the rigid rulebook enforced by the landlord, or the daily, unpredictable habits of the human beings actually living inside it?